Hi, I'm Lawrence Linker. I've spent my career working at the intersection of finance, education, and technology, and I built XD Academy to be the learning platform that I wish had existed when I started in crypto 3 years ago. But what I found to be the most effective way to learn wasn't through reading books or articles, but by talking to friends that were smarter than me and had powerful wisdom and insights to share. So while we get the XD Academy's platform up and running, I want to bring some of these conversations to you directly by interviewing friends and colleagues that have great things to share. Thanks so much for being back.
Thanks for having me, Lawrence. It's great to be back.
Ivan, we had a great conversation a few weeks ago with Sherry and Daniel. I learned a little bit about you. I learned a little bit about stablecoins, but we were talking so fast and covered so many subjects. I thought it would be best if I brought you back to go a little deeper on your background and your thoughts. So first of all, I wanted to ask you about your origin story because it's so interesting. You told us about how buying your medicine that you needed over Bitcoin was cheaper, and this is the first thing that really piqued your interest. But then you sort of developed from there. So maybe tell us about sort of the advisory and consultancy work that you've done in the space.
Sure. So since I first got into cryptocurrency, I guess in 2015, my interest has only kind of grown from there. I've done a bunch of consulting work for various layer ones as well as some regulatory agencies in Singapore. So I've worked for Zilliqa, which is an alternative layer one blockchain. I've also done some work briefly for Protocol Labs, which is the company behind Filecoin, and IPFS on the ecosystem growth side. I've also consulted for a bunch of other projects. One was doing parametric insurance in the blockchain, which is basically insurance that automatically pays out, for example, based on weather conditions without having to claim from an insurer. And I've also been the editor for the Singapore Blockchain Ecosystem Report, which is this kind of landscape overview of the Singapore blockchain ecosystem for the central bank in Singapore, as well as the tech regulator here.
Very interesting. And I guess I'm always interested in hearing the stories of how people knowledge up in crypto, particularly in the early days. And I think part of my interest in that is because I hope that in the future, XD Academy can be a location where people who want to knowledge up today can do it in a much easier way than what people like you or I had to go through in the earlier days where information was harder to get to. But why don't you tell me a little bit about your process for when you started learning about crypto? How did you sort of get to a position where you could even do consulting based on it?
Sure. I think, like as you mentioned, it's a very nascent space. A lot of the information is really fragmented across different platforms, different blogs, different sites, different thought leaders. And as of today, I mean, it's certainly a lot better than it was back then, right? There's a ton of more resources. It's a lot better organized. But I think the only way to do it is to have a lot of self-directed learning. And when I say that, I mean that you've got to have a real good reason why you want to do it. I think that's the more important thing to have as a foundational layer, right? Because I had a very strong interest in wanting to learn what, a little bit more about this open source form of financial services and money. So I think that's what drove me to plow through even the difficulty of having to figure out all this unstructured information and put it together in a coherent format in my head. So I think starting with why is kind of important. And then I think it's also interesting to say, okay, what are you most interested in terms of the applications of that technology, and kind of look at how that blockchain technology or how crypto or DeFi applies to that particular application that you care about. So those are really two really good starting points I would suggest for anybody wanting to get into the space.
Yeah, makes sense. And then what made you make the decision to get like a job in the space?
I think I'd reached a point in my career where I was kind of a little bit tired working for large corporate companies. Well, not because, well, I mean, the money was incredibly good. Don't get me wrong, but I think I lacked the sense of purpose in my life, right? I mean, most people who take an economics degree or a business degree go into consulting with the big four, either audit firms or MBB consultancies, or you go into investment banking. And that's kind of the path that's kind of laid out for most people that come from my background. But I think I wanted to do something that was different. And I wanted to do something that also I felt that I could stick through, not just for a couple of years and then just leave, but something that could contribute meaningfully to like 10, 20 years of my career, right? And look back and say that I've actually made a difference in some way.
Yeah. And what do you feel like you're getting that opportunity now? Do you feel like you're making a difference?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think when you have the ability to innovate on top of a permissionless system of money and finance and reinvent some of those fundamentals, you genuinely feel like you're changing the world. And I know that sounds cliche, but for example, with what we do at Request Finance, we're enabling people to get paid anywhere around the world in cryptocurrencies. That has never happened before.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about request finance again. So just to review for people that may have missed the previous podcast, you work at a company that's essentially a payroll processor working in crypto. And you gave a great example. I'll let people refer to the other podcasts of a great example of why you'd want something like that, for security reasons. But tell us a little bit more about the mechanics of how request finance works. And I guess in particular, I'm interested in knowing which stablecoins do you see being most popular?
Sure. So I think Request Finance is today the world's largest crypto payroll application. We launched in about January of 2021, and we've done over $300 million of crypto payroll expenses and invoices. And really the value that we bring and how we really work is that we kind of provide a Web2 experience, just like you would have in a banking application or if you would have in Zero, QuickBooks, or something like that. Or let's say Bill.com or Expensify, just that we're running on cryptocurrency rails. And that's drastically different from what you have today with cryptocurrency wallets and making payments using crypto wallets. So we just simplify and automate the entire process around paying people in cryptocurrency. And about 60% of our transaction volume is actually in US dollar stablecoins, right? About half of that is USDC, right, which is by Circle. I do think that custodial stablecoins, so the ones that are held backed one-to-one with either treasury bills or short-term securities, short-term securities, highly liquid securities, or just cash in bank are gonna be the most dominant, at least for the foreseeable future, particularly with the kind of regulation that's being tabled right now before Congress in the United States that would effectively make all other forms of, well, non-centralized stablecoins more or less illegal to use for US persons. So I think that's also a model that's going to give people more confidence in the short term. But I think I'm kind of interested to see how that evolves as the space matures and you get, for example, commodity-backed stablecoins or asset-backed stablecoins like gold, like silver, maybe even things like real estate or something like that.
Got it. And you said that 60% of the currencies that you guys see are US dollar backed or US dollar denominated stable coins, and half of those are USDT. What is the other half?
A USDC, so that's like Circle, right? The other half is like, let's see, about 13% is USDT, which is Tether. Another 12% is DAI, which is the decentralized stablecoin, the original one. And then another 3% is CeLO USD, and a bunch of other smaller stable coins.
Yeah. So okay, so if I have this correct, for people transacting through your platform, more people are using USDC than any other US dollar stablecoin. But in the real world, the market cap of USDT Tether is much bigger. So why do you think it is that people are using Circle with you, even though Tether is bigger?
Sure. So I think the big reason is because USDC by Circle is a lot more seamlessly integrated with existing banking infrastructure than USDT. right? So if people wanted to buy USDC or they wanted to sell it for dollars in their bank account, it's a lot easier to do that with Circle than it is with the other stable coins.
Mm. Tell me, that's super interesting. So I guess, to be honest, I always thought of the stable coins as fairly fungible, excluding the possibility of a DPEG. But now it sounds like there, maybe some advantages that certain stable coins would have. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think today, the way that I would think of exchanging between stable coins and fiat currencies is the same way that you would probably think of how we move from holding physical cash to digital cash in our wallets, in our mobile wallets today. So I think the easier it is to do that, and the more accessible these sort of digital ATMs are, and that's basically what these stablecoin issuers provide. They provide a digital ATM to go from traditional non-blockchain based currencies to a blockchain based currency. And companies like Circle, which are centralized stablecoin issuers that hold one more or less a one-to-one backing of cash and short-term securities to the stablecoins that they issue, are kind of best suited to provide that what we call on and off ramp, but it's basically that ATM service to convert your non-blockchain based dollars to blockchain based dollars.
Hmm. And that on off ramp, is that happening with the issuer? Like I am basically redeeming my stablecoin for cash
That's
because
right.
I could also just sell it on an exchange, right?
You could. Yeah. So you can, but then it's the fees are typically higher, and especially at the volumes that, let's say, businesses are processing in terms of their, managing their payroll expenses, invoices, and things like that. That's where even a small markup in fees can be quite substantial. So I think that's the reason why you see centralized stablecoin issuers do particularly well for enterprise use, as opposed to, let's say, retail use, where it's like, okay, I'm just transacting $1,000. I don't mind 1.5% to 2% in fees, right?
Got it. Okay. And so what about that other 40%? You said 60% of your volume is in US dollar stable coins. What's the other 40% in?
The other 40% is really in more volatile cryptocurrencies, right? So your Ethereum, your Avalanche, all these other sort of like native tokens, so we call them, of layer one blockchains or alternative blockchains as well. And those are really paid out for, as I would say, think of it as bonuses, right? So a lot of these crypto native companies, they don't, some of them do have equity share option plans, but a lot of them just pay out in the native tokens of their platform, right? And that kind of serves as a substitute for share options. But that's really the bonus component of the compensation more so than the actual salary.
Got it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Super interesting, Ivan. So I think you're just coming back from a crypto conference or a few crypto conferences, right? Tell us about
that's right.
that.
So I just came back from East Tokyo, which was amazing. It was my first time in Tokyo. Understood a little bit more about the landscape there in Asia. I think one of the biggest differences that I noticed is that Asia hits different. There's this energy to the Asian space. Well, I mean, generally in tech, but also specifically in blockchain, I guess, in crypto, that just is unmatched anywhere else I found. There's this optimism for the future. There's this sense that, oh, anything's possible. There's this sense that the environment is a lot friendlier to live in, both from a regulatory standpoint as well as a sort of like a livability standpoint that I find particularly exciting. And a lot of people are moving from places like the US and places like Europe to come live in places like Singapore or Tokyo or Seoul. And that's pretty cool to me.
Yeah, I had a conversation with someone recently um, where they said, so we saw that the CEO and founder of Coinbase, Brian Armstrong, said that if the U.S. doesn't get its act together, he'll move Coinbase out of the U.S., which is incredible because Coinbase, in my mind, has always been like the U.S. exchange, right? It's sort of like
Absolutely.
the flagship of U.S. exchanges, and most of the big exchanges that I've gotten started after, like they would never want to be headquartered in in the US, but
No.
Coinbase has really stood its ground. And
Yeah.
if you're getting to the point where Coinbase is saying they're going to leave, like it's pretty, you're probably in a bad space. Um, but I guess there's a lot of people that think that if Coinbase does follow through on that threat, that they'll probably move to Singapore.
Yeah, I mean, well, a lot of these large companies, especially like your centralized exchanges, just like Coinbase, they do have licenses in Singapore already, and that's been some time in the making, right? So I think it's been quite clear to anyone who's been watching this space that Singapore has always been a plan B. And it's
Yeah.
also, and Singapore has also been a plan B for not just people in the US or in Europe, but Singapore has always been a plan B for a lot of companies, for example, in China, right? We saw that in the last wave, and I think we're going to see that again.
Yeah. It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time to be in crypto, and it's an exciting time to be in Singapore as well. So, Ivan, thank you so much for catching up with me. It was really good to learn a little bit more about you and about Request Finance. Any parting thoughts or anything you want to plug or any links you want us to share or anything like that?
Sure. Well, I guess if you're a team that pays, if you're a global team that pays people in cryptocurrencies, if you're a DAO, whether you're a foundation or just a project that's starting out, you can go visit us at request.finance. So that's also our Twitter handle, and check us out.
Yeah. Okay. We'll make sure to share this on our socials and put that link up in the video as well. Ivan, thanks so much for talking. Look forward to seeing you around.
Thanks so much, Lawrence.
All right. Well, there you have it. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Please check us out on xd.academy. We're putting new content up all the time. Look out for our community coming soon. We're going to want to see you in there for sure. And we will definitely look forward to catching you next time.